Coming in at number 10 as a bit of an honorable mention is the Batman Who Laughs. Now, the reason this villain is only getting an honorable mention is because he's relatively new and has had a huge amount of publicity in the few years since his creation. But I still do think this character deserves some more exploration further down the road. As a twisted combination of Bruce Wayne and the Joker from the Dark Multiverse, the Batman Who Laughs was an incredibly intimidating villain that only got even more powerful when he gained the powers of Dr. Manhattan and became the Darkest Knight. But seeing as how he was then killed by God Mode Wonder Woman, and I do think that the Batman Who Laughs deserves a comeback in the near future so that we can see what really happens when the true Batman and the Batman Who Laughs go head to head. Coming in at number 9, we have Owlman, the evil opposite of Batman from Earth 3. Born under the name of Thomas Wayne Jr., as a young boy, Owlman murdered his younger brother Bruce and had his butler Alfred kill his parents to ensure that the Wayne fortune was not wasted by their frivolous spending. Using his costumed identity as Owlman to intimidate the leaders of Gotham into falling under his control, Owlman was a twisted version of everything that Batman stood for, and every time their universes have crossed over has led to some incredibly dramatic battles. And with the DC Omniverse recently having become a lot more open than it was during the New 52 era, it's only a matter of time before Owlman and Batman are trying to outwit one another once more. Coming in at number 8, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only 9 issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, using a weather machine to hide his minions' robberies with a thick layer of fog, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power in Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and why he definitely deserves to come back in a major Batman storyline. Coming in at number 7, we have the intelligent zombie, Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy is also incredibly resilient to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by either Batman or Superman, they need to figure out a clever new way to defeat him. Solomon Grundy has always been a dependable muscle for other villains throughout the years, but it would be nice to see him take more of a starring role in an upcoming Batman story. Coming in at number 6, we have Catman. Yep, that's not a typo, there's an actual Batman villain named Catman, and we'd love to see more of him in the comics as he continues to walk the fine line between villain and anti-hero. Born under the name Thomas Blake, Catman was initially a famous lion trapper that decided a life of crime was a better use of his peak human abilities, and even based his initial costume on that of the already established villain Catwoman. However, after years of being thwarted by Batman and becoming mocked by other supervillains, Catman reformed himself after some time in the jungle into becoming an anti-hero, and was most recently seen working alongside the Suicide Squad. With all of this character development making him more than just a joke character, Catman definitely deserves to face off against Batman once more.
Halfway through in at number 5, Joker's daughter. Unfortunately, it's not the Joker's biological daughter. That would have been an interesting story. This is just the girl who finds Joker's face, stitches it onto hers, and then goes berserk. So honestly, it could very well be his biological daughter. The only person that I think would commit such an atrocious act is in fact the Joker, so who knows. While maybe not being as prolific or accomplished as the Joker, Joker's daughter is definitely insane enough for this list. Like, even if I'm pretty sure Like, a lot of people know she exists and like not many people underestimate her, but hey, look, even if one person underestimates her and they watch this video, boom, it's enough. It counts, okay? Not to mention the fact that she also went by Catgirl, Scarecrow, Riddler's daughter, Penguin's daughter, Card Queen, and Harley Quinn. Each incarnation also calling herself the respected super person's daughter, which I have to say is going to make a family reunion real awkward. But in actuality, she ended up being Dwella Dent, Two-Face's daughter, apparently, which is seemingly BS in my opinion, but we love a girl with a little flair, you know? And that flair will cause her to ruin Gotham City. In it for Clock King. Born William Talkman, Clock King spends his early years taking care of his invalid sister. One day he finds out from a doctor that he himself only has 6 months to live. Great. Despairing for his sister's future, he watches the timing of a local bank's vault in order to rob it, hoping that the money would provide for his sister after he was gone. His caper would have gone on successfully had he not tripped the silent alarm and been caught by the Green Arrow. The Clock King then goes on to join Major Disasters in Justice League, which becomes the Justice League Antarctica. This JLA includes G-Nort, who ends up saving the lives of the entire team. The original Clock King had no metahuman powers or abilities, although he is athletic and extraordinarily smart. He extensively uses clocks and time-related gimmicks to devastating effect. His primary weapon is a sword forged into the shape of a clock's hand that also doubles as a walking stick. And his skill in swordsmanship is such that even Batman himself could not defeat him in single combat. So watch out for Clock King. Getting close to the end into number 3, the Calculator. While the Calculator now seems to be an oracle of sorts for supervillains, the original purpose and MO of the Calculator is far more entertaining and interesting, at least to me. Noah Cutler began his criminal career by crossing the country and getting into fights with various superheroes on purpose, analyzing and recording their battle tactics to ensure that he couldn't be beaten again. Or in some incarnations, he would simply get beaten and then press a button on his chest to ensure that he didn't get beat again. Maybe that was like taking in the information or something, like how Iron Man would just say like analyze his fight patterns and then come up with countermeasures, you know? But either way, okay, do you know how insanely overpowered that could have been? Just being able to like press a button and then boom, you're instantly basically immune to Batman or Robin or even Superman. Like that would be absolutely amazing. You do this enough times and you could just do whatever you want. And like then other criminals like start paying you to do their crimes for them because you guarantee success. That's freaking nuts. Okay, I wish they kept that Calculator. That could have been an even bigger threat than Darkseid if he kept going at it like that. This is why I'm the hero, because I would be unstoppable as a villain. Penultimately in at number 2, Lex Joker. Lex Joker was created when John Dee, also known as Dr. Destiny, collapsed the DC universe in half. First appearing in Superman Batman number 60 in 2009, Lex Joker is the combination of, you guessed it, Lex Luthor and Joker. Lex Joker hired Doomstroke and Terranado to destroy the Justice Titans. However, after the JTs allied with Batman and Superman, he hired 4 more mercenaries to create the Brotherhood of Injustice. Thanks to Terra, who had gone undercover with the JTs, they were able to attack the Justice Tower and come on, let's be honest. If you have the brains of Lex Luthor and the complete insanity of the Joker, you're making one heck of an opponent. When you have 2 powerful forces in comics, at some point there's like bound to be a mashup of the 2 to create a larger, even more powerful villain. And Lex Joker is probably the scariest combination we could have gotten that wasn't like Joker and Doomsday or Joker and Darkseid. Oh god, Joker Darkseid. And finally, in at number 1, the Eraser. The Eraser was the chosen alias of Lenny Fiasco, who turned to crime after living his college days under constant mocking and taunting by his classmates. Of course, it's because, you know, that's what college is like. No, that's high school, bro. Fiasco is a professional at covering the tracks of other crimes. For a 20% cut, the Eraser will erase the evidence of another crime. And honestly, I think that it's like the only job that anyone with the name Fiasco could have. The villain's power is a special helmet designed to look like a pencil eraser, because of course it is, that can wipe off evidence, even those that would be invisible to the naked eye, which is pretty damn cool when you think about it. After Batman posed as a villain to try to capture the Eraser, the villain told Bruce that he had became a criminal because Bruce had shattered his dreams of going out with Celia Smith. I'm not even gonna get into that, okay? Bruce didn't even remember her name, which made the Eraser angry. And I think that this is probably the absolute coolest concept for a supervillain, because in all honesty, if this guy wasn't an idiot, he could have ruled the world. Like, just straight up, this guy would absolutely ruin any and all investigations and then turn the tides of trials. This guy could have ended up being just like a shadow government in himself, okay? If only he wasn't just a dumbass.
Coming in at number 10 is Calendar Man. Julian Gregory Day, whose name is a pun on the Julian and Gregorian calendars, has an obsession with dates. committing crimes that always have a relationship to the date that they are committed on, usually covering the major holidays. Like most of the messed up members of the Batman's rogue gallery, Calendar Man had a rough childhood. His parents neglected him, which almost resulted in his death from days of exposure, which in turn resulted in his complete psychotic break, an obsession with days and holidays. First appearing in Detective Comics number 259 in September of 1958, Calendar Man was a bit sillier, using different costumes to commit crimes based on the days of the calendar, like dressing up as an Indian magician representing the monsoon season. But after the Crisis on Infinite Earths, Calendar Man was barely used and instead got a great revamp by writer Jeff Loeb, Batman The Long Halloween. In this new version, Calendar Man was institutionalized in Arkham Asylum and was deemed as an insane, ruthless criminal with abbreviations of the months tattooed around his head in a circle with no silly costumes or ridiculous crimes. Number 9. Flamingo. Eduardo Flamingo, known as Flamingo, is a world-famous serial taker of lives and assassin. He is well known for a specific thing he does which inspired his sometimes name of the Eater of Faces, which explains itself, I'd say. Eduardo was actually a morally strong advocate and fighter against organized crime, but it changed when he was captured and underwent forced brain surgery that altered his personality, making him dangerously psychotic. Now, the incredibly colorful Flamingo is an enforcer and assassin, rocking a very unique look and somehow totally making a pink motorcycle not look silly. He has a dark, unfeeling personality and is an expert marksman, which makes up for his lack of powers and makes him a pretty dangerous threat for Batman. He has even temporarily paralyzed Damian Wayne, so think twice before you judge. He'll chew your face off, man. Batman's obscure villains usually happen to be a bit more serious and psychotic, but a lot of obscure villains can be completely ridiculous and silly, which makes me wonder, what are some of the silliest and wackiest, commonly unknown villains that you guys love? Let me know in the comments and I'll get on with this video. Number 8. Humpty Dumpty. With his house being demolished, his dog being run over, and his parents being crushed by a Christmas tree on Christmas, things weren't too great for Humphrey Dumpler. He was mistreated by his grandmother, who he was forced to live with, and because of his appearance and mental capacity, he was bullied. Of all things, the last straw for Humphrey was missing a subway train. Humphrey was obsessed with fixing things, and since the missing of the train, he started going out late at night to disassemble and reassemble mechanical devices which had upset him in some way. But since he wasn't very intelligent and all the info he got was from books, the things he fixed actually caused a lot of accidents. The first was the same train he missed, which then crashed. Now going by Humpty Dumpty, he was tracked down by Batgirl, who dislocated her shoulder, saving him. Humpty Dumpty fixed her shoulder, but then also revealed that he had evolved from disassembling devices to disassembling and reassembling people. Namely his grandmother, who he believed had to have been broken and in need of repair. So he took her apart, then attempted to sew her back together again with bootlaces. Wow, that got really dark, like really quick. Kind of uncomfy. Number 7. Joker's daughter. Honestly, did not even know this character existed, which just shows how much I don't know about Batman's villains. Duella Dent is all over the place. Psychologically, I mean. She started as the villain who refers to herself as Joker's daughter, even though she is absolutely not his daughter. As you can tell, she has an unhealthy obsession with the clown, which has been a thing since she debuted in Batman Family number 6 in 1976. She has also claimed to be the daughter of Catwoman, Scarecrow, Riddler, and Penguin. She deduced Robin's identity, and he in turn revealed that she was Duella Dent, and that it was believed that she was actually Two-Face's daughter, which also isn't true, as she is actually from Earth 3 and her father was Jokester, with her mother being Evelyn Dent, Earth 3's Three-Face. Despite not being Joker's child, Duella proves herself worthy of the title. She uses equipment that is very similar to the Joker's usual flair, and more recently she has been rewritten as almost completely bonkers, which is especially evident after the Clown Prince's seeming demise. Also, before 2011, she was on the Teen Titans as Harlequin for a while. Number 6. Cornelius Stirk. Cornelius Stirk is one of those villains that you don't hear much about, but is one of the more gruesome and terrifying members of Batman's rogue gallery. Stirk suffers from delusions which make him believe that he requires the nutrients of a human heart in order to stay alive, and not just any heart. Specifically, Cornelius believes that the heart is the most nutritious when it is full of norepinephrine, a natural hormone that secretes when a person is terrified, as well as adrenaline. So he uses his unexplained psionic ability to mentally make people perceive him as someone else, which other than allowing him to break out of Arkham Asylum, also allowed him to get close to his victims and then completely terrify them in the most insane ways before he quickly ends them and partakes in a nice old hearty meal, literally. I think the interesting thing about Stirk is that he is actually really effective at what he does, being able to evade Batman and even render him unconscious on one occasion.
Coming in at number 5, we have Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. The owner of the Iceberg Lounge, perhaps the most famous criminal hangout in all of Gotham City, the Penguin might look similar to his namesake, but is far more deadly in reality. While an impressive crime lord even without any superhuman enhancements, the Penguin is made extra deadly by the special umbrella he carries, which is always stuffed to the brim with different lethal gadgets to help him fight against Batman or any other supervillain that seems interested in starting a turf war. This unpredictability and Oswald's sanity not quite being all there make the Penguin an incredibly difficult opponent to read, hiding the fact that this crime lord is far more dangerous than he initially appears. Coming in at number 4, we've got the reality warping Bat-Mite. A troublesome imp from the same fifth dimension as the Superman villain Mr. Mxyzptlk, the Bat-Mite is honestly more of a nuisance than a flat-out supervillain, often appearing just to try and challenge Batman or to see more of his heroic acts. Sending Bat-Mite back to his own dimension is usually a tall order given his complete reality warping powers, but luckily the world's greatest detective is usually smart enough to outwit Bat-Mite and send him packing to where he truly belongs. However, fifth-dimensional beings have nearly limitless power within our regular three-dimensional universe, meaning that Bat-Mite should probably have a close eye kept on him in the future. Coming in at number 3, we have Arthur Brown, aka the Clue Master. Not to be confused with the similarly themed Riddler, the Clue Master is a former game show host who wound up turning to crime in order to pay the bills. The father of Batman ally Spoiler, the Clue Master for a time seemed to embrace the role of being a second-rate supervillain, before it was eventually revealed that his status as a Riddler ripoff was actually intentional, and that organizing Batman's more underrated foes was his master plan all along to avoid detection. It's not often that a villain is able to temporarily outwit the Caped Crusader, and Clue Master shows just how powerful the right man with a plan can become. Coming in at number 2, we've got Poison Ivy. Born under the name of Pamela Isley, Poison Ivy has always been dead set on protecting the green plant life of the planet Earth, and especially values it over human life. While well known for being able to control plants and utilizing poisonous kisses as a weapon, Ivy's powers may be beyond what she usually shows off. In a particularly noteworthy storyline, Poison Ivy was able to mind control essentially the entire human population of Earth through their consumption of fruits and vegetables. And while that's definitely some weird comic book logic as to how that would work, Batman was only barely able to defeat her by bringing her into contact with the one human being she cares about the most, Harley Quinn. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Batman Who Laughs. In a dark alternate world where the Joker realizes he's dying and begins a mass killing spree of everyone in Gotham, Batman is forced to finally kill his iconic foe. Unfortunately, at the moment of death, Bruce Wayne is infected with a special brand of Joker venom that completely flips his moral compass, but leaves intact all of his intelligence and tactical planning. All of the chaos of the Joker with the brains of Batman, this supervillain is Bruce Wayne's worst nightmare come to life, and was able to become so powerful over the course of his war against the multiverse that he was only able to be defeated by a literal God mode powered Wonder Woman.
Starting us off in at number 10, Bootface. Okay, this guy's origin is the reason I wanted to talk about him. Bootface's origin was getting kicked in the face by Batman. That's it. I'm not even kidding. Bootface was a thug working for Terminus. He got his name because of the boot print embedded in his face, which, like I said, is from Batman. Bootface first appeared in Batman and Robin Volume 2 number 10 from 2012, and honestly, it's one of the most interesting origins I've seen. And I mean this completely seriously. Everyone else has like relatives die or was living in poverty. This dude just got kicked in the face and got so mad that he became a supervillain. Like, even if he wasn't really a good person beforehand, I mean, like, he was a thug and basically still is, but this time he has a ridiculous name. And a man who is fueled by pure rage because he was permanently scarred by his attacker that ends up being a superhero, yeah, that's good enough for me. Plus, I hadn't heard of this guy, so maybe you didn't either. And at 9, Professor Pig. Professor Pig originally debuted in the alternate reality story of Batman number 666, which I love. However, was introduced as a recurring character in 2009 in Batman and Robin number 1. In Batman Reborn, Laszlo Valentine was an extreme circus mob boss until something turned him into Professor Pig, leading him to begin funding his scientific experiments by selling, illicit substances to the criminal underworld. All in all, he's an extremely disturbing villain and makes me think about why people aren't afraid of pigs as they are afraid of clowns. Because if you ask me, this guy is freaking horrifying. Professor Pig, if you couldn't tell, actually ends up wearing a pig mask along with a butcher's apron and what at times appears to be some form of hastily thrown together surgical outfit. This is just freaking weird, and he ends up brainwashing and controlling various people, and he ends up calling them Dollatrons. Straight up, I don't know what else to do with him other than just run away, so I'm going to move on now. Although next time I have a pet pig in Minecraft, I know what I'm naming him. And at 8, Joker's daughter. Unfortunately, it's not Joker's biological daughter. That would be a very interesting story. But this is just the girl who finds Joker's face, stitches it onto hers, and then goes berserk. So honestly, it could very well be his biological spawn. The only person that I think could commit such an atrocious act like this is the Joker, so who knows. While maybe not being as prolific and accomplished as the Joker, Joker's daughter is definitely insane enough to make this list, even if I'm pretty sure many people know about her. But hey, even if one person didn't and they watched this video, then boom, it's enough for me and it counts. But not to mention the fact that she also went by Catgirl, Scarecrow, Riddler's daughter, Penguin's daughter, Card Queen, and Harley Quinn. Each incarnation also calling herself the respected super person's daughter, which I have to say is going to make the family reunion very awkward. But in actuality, she ended up being Duella Dent, Two-Face's daughter. Apparently, which seems like BS, but we all love a girl with a little flair, you know? And at 7, Birthday Boy. Ray Salinger was a serial killer who operated in Gotham. Under the alias Birthday Boy, he was actually the first costume criminal encountered by Batman during his crime-fighting career. Introduced in Batman Earth 1 Volume 1 in 2012, Birthday Boy is fascinated by young girls resembling his first kill, a 15-year-old named Amanda Grant. When in his killer mode, he wears a burlap sack with holes cut out for his eyes and a birthday party hat, usually in a room decorated like a young girl's room at a birthday party. Great. As a calling card, he left birthday candles where he stole away his victim and told his victims to make a wish to a cake decorated with the words "Happy Birthday, Amanda," which is only creepier since we have our own Amanda here, and I feel like this guy is a representation of all her DMs. I think the sickest part of this character though was that when Batman first started, Birthday Boy had been hired by Mayor Oswald Cobblepot to eliminate his various enemies, and in return, he was given girls from the street or enemies of the Penguin as a reward. God. This is something that you'd see on like Criminal Minds. And at 6, the King of Cats. First introduced in, I don't think this was ironically, Batman number 69, nice, from 1952, Carl Kyle is the brother of Selina Kyle, who was inspired by his sister's infamy to become a costume criminal. His cat-like garb and his crimes revolved around the theme of cats, and he resembles a male version of Catwoman. In March of 1952, Gotham City was struck by a series of feline-related crimes, perpetrated not by the now reformed Selina Kyle, but by a costume criminal known as the King of Cats. Carl sends flowers to Selina, causing Batman to investigate her involvement, like the jealous boyfriend he is. He soon becomes convinced that she is innocent, but asks that her, the expert on feline-themed crimes, didn't know that was a thing, to aid him and Robin in arresting the King of Cats. Selina, however, refuses because it's her brother, but she doesn't tell Batman that. He gets captured easily by Batman and has his handed to him multiple times. I guess you're a punching bag when you're not a female that Batman wants to sleep with. Sorry, Carl.
At number 5, there's Ra's al Ghul. This guy is such a huge Batman villain in the comics, I'm surprised he hasn't appeared in the movies yet. Ra's is hundreds of years old and uses any means necessary to change the outcome of the future to suit his wishes. He thinks he's doing good for the world by using extreme deadly force against any evildoers, which is a really complex motivation that kind of makes him border on anti-hero. And that's one of the reasons why he'd be a good addition to the DCEU. With a lot of this list consisting of somewhat fantastical villains, Ross comes off as more of a human character. And with his complex motivations, it makes him a writer's dream when it comes to adding drama to the script. It also might open a door for DC to explore the history of the DC universe by delving into the hundreds of years of Ra's past. The Lazarus Pit is also a great motif that could create some pretty cool conflict among good and evil characters in the DCEU. My casting choice would be Daniel Day-Lewis, by the way, since you didn't ask. That is if they can convince him to come out of retirement, of course. At number 4, there's Hush. This is one of my favorite villains in the Batman universe, and I think he'd make a great addition to the DCEU. Hush is a childhood friend of Bruce Wayne, also growing up very wealthy. But the difference was that Hush, aka Thomas Elliot, hated his parents to the point where he tried to kill them. Hush goes on to become an enraged villain wrapped in surgical bandages wielding 2 pistols who hates Batman. Now, he doesn't seem to me to be enough of a powerful character to drive a whole movie, but I imagine he could fill in a supporting role very well if given the chance. In Matt Reeves' Batman, there appears to be an Easter egg that might hint to Hush as a potential villain in sequels to come, as the Riddler is revealing to Batman that, spoiler alert, his own father was responsible for an innocent man's death. The word hush appears on the screen for a moment. And who is that innocent person? A reporter with the last name Elliot, just like Hush. Bit of a stretch? I don't know, I think that was intentional. So maybe my wish will come true in some form, even if you still don't consider Matt Reeves' Batman part of the DCEU. At number 3, we've got Scarecrow. Although he appeared in the Dark Knight trilogy played by a favorite of mine, Cillian Murphy, these movies aren't really considered part of the DCEU. This means that this villain is a free agent for future DCEU projects, where he would hopefully be depicted in a bit more of a grand fashion. This villain has been around since 1941, first appearing in World's Finest Comics number 3, so however he'd be worked into a future film or TV show would need to be as grand and impactful as he is in the comics. I think it would be so cool to see how they'd incorporate his fear gas. Like, what would it look like to see the public or even Batman lose their minds to fear in a contemporary context? Like, what would an artificial instillment of fear on the public look like in a more modern Gotham? Perhaps this could be a good chance for commentary on the current human experience and give the DCEU a bit more groundedness. I don't know, maybe their MO is to keep things more detached from reality, but that's the sort of direction I'd like to see them go, personally. And Scarecrow and his abilities might just be a great chance to do that. Okay, at number 2, Jason Todd. Where has Robin been in the DCEU? This popular question seems to be answered simply by the fact that adding Robin might be too campy. The sidekick trope could come off as seeming a bit too old-fashioned, and this might just be what's holding the folks in charge from making it happen. But whatever you think of Jason Todd, he is the Robin that I think could ground the character in a contemporary setting, considering his darker look, motivations, and insecurities. This also opens the door to build a strong through line in a TV series or set of films. I mean, the event of Jason's death at the hands of the Joker is pretty powerful, and if done right, could also build up to a really sweet resurrection in a later sequel or episode. Robin doesn't have to be this quick-witted, bright-eyed sidekick. He can be dark, he can be vengeful, and he can add some really great drama to any DCEU project with his complex relationship to Batman. And if you're thinking, no Ben, it should be Damian Wayne or Tim Drake, well, Damian, as much as I'd love to see him too, would require Batman to be old enough to have a son. And Tim Drake, he's awesome in the comics, but he just doesn't have that dark edge that Jason Todd does. And as for Stephanie Brown, okay, fine, she'd be cool too. Either one. And finally, at number 1, it's Mr. Freeze. Where has Mr. Freeze been? He hasn't even been alluded to or hinted at all, other than Matt Reeves suggesting that he might be interested in exploring the character for a Batman sequel. There's been really no talk of him for the DCEU. Maybe Arnold Schwarzenegger's portrayal scared producers away from considering him because of how silly he can come across. But I really think this character could pose an awesome challenge to see how he could be toned down and modernized for a new appearance. I love this character. He's one of the most nostalgic villains for me, and his backstory falls into that category where you have so much sympathy for him that you almost want him to win sometimes. I just think the DCEU has a chance here to harken back to the early 2000s Batman and Robin nostalgia and make as much of a change with Mr. Freeze as they did with Joker or Batman himself. What would a toned down, darker version of Mr. Freeze look like? I genuinely want to know. Plus, it would just be cool to see how they would work with the visuals for the ice gun. What would the ice beam look like, and how would they justify such insane technology on a more grounded, pseudo real world setting?
And 10, Birthday Boy. Ray Salinger was a serial killer who operated in Gotham under the alias Birthday Boy, and he was actually the first costumed criminal encountered by Batman in his crime-fighting career. Introduced in Batman Earth 1 Volume 1 in June 2012, Birthday Boy is fascinated by young girls resembling his first kill. When in his killer mode, he wears a burlap sack with holes cut out for the eyes and a birthday party hat, usually in a room decorated like a birthday party. As a calling card, he left birthday candles where he stole away his victims and told his victims to make a wish that was decorated with the words "Happy Birthday, Amanda," which is only creepier since we have Amanda here. And I feel like this guy is a representation of all of her DMs. That's right, I'm calling all of you nerds out. I think the sickest part of this character though was when he first started the whole Birthday Boy thing. He had been hired by Mayor Oswald Cobblepot to eliminate various enemies. In return, he was given girls from the streets or enemies of the Penguin as a reward. And at 9, Professor Pig. Professor Pig originally debuted in the alternate reality story of Batman number 666, which I love. He also debuted as a corpse, which I love even more. However, he was introduced as a recurring character in 2009 in Batman and Robin number 1. In Batman Reborn, Laszlo Valentine was an extreme circus mob boss until something turned him into Professor Pig, leading him to begin funding his scientific experiments by selling narcotics to the criminal underworld. All in all, he's an extremely disturbing villain, and that makes me think about why people aren't afraid of pigs as much as they are clowns, because if you ask me, this guy is freaking horrifying, okay? Professor Pig, if you couldn't tell, actually wears a pig mask, along with a butcher's apron, and what at times appears to be some form of hastily thrown together surgical outfit, like he got it from like Wish. Or he got it from like Party City. It's freaking weird. Also ends up brainwashing and controlling various people who he calls his Dolotrons. Like, I don't know what else there is to do other than just run away, so I'm gonna move on now. Although next time I have a pet pig in Minecraft, I know what I'm naming him. And at 8, Bootface. Okay, this guy's origin is the reason I wanted to talk about him. This guy's origin was simply him getting kicked in the face by Batman, and that's it, I'm not even kidding. Bootface was a thug working for Terminus. He got his name because of a boot imprint embedded into his face, which, like I said, is from Batman. Bootface first appeared in Batman and Robin Volume 2, number 10 from 2012, and honestly, it's one of the most interesting origins I've ever seen. And I mean this completely seriously. Everyone else has like a parent die, or was living in poverty, or was being abused. This dude just got kicked in the face and got so mad about it he became a supervillain. Even if he wasn't really like a good person beforehand, I mean, like, he was a thug and basically still is, but like still, just this time he has a ridiculous name to go with it, but hey, I still love it. And a man who is fueled by pure rage because he was permanently scarred by his attacker that ends up being a superhero, that's good enough for me. That's so funny. Bootface. And at 7, Mirror Man. Lloyd Ventures is a criminal who was detained in Gotham State Penitentiary. Using broken mirror shards, he distracts the guards long enough to escape from prison. Inspired by mirrors, I guess somehow, he becomes Mirror Man. Upon creating a machine that would enable him to see through objects, Mirror Man began targeting Batman so that he could find out his secret identity. He literally discovers Batman's identity as Bruce Wayne by using a X-ray mirror, which is freaking nuts. Like, what even is that? How is that a thing? Mirror Man actually gets sent to prison before he can reveal the identity though, but because they want conflict, of course, he manages to escape with a plan to reveal Bruce's identity to the world, only foiled when Alfred, dressed as Batman, interrupts a press conference that Bruce Wayne was hosting, instantly disproving the fact that Batman is Bruce Wayne, because you saw them both in the same room. Even though that obviously Batman has partners. I don't know why people believe that. The public should have seen through this, okay? The people in Gotham City are dumber than we thought. I mean, they had Condiment King, so I guess they are dumb. Speaking of which, in its 6th, Condiment King. The Condiment King, created by Bruce Timm and Paul Dini for Batman the Animated Series, is a villain who makes use of various condiments, sometimes capable of causing anaphylactic shock. And his weapons are literally like those like squeeze tubes for like ketchup and mustard, just on guns. It's hilarious. He's generally used as comic relief within the series, but still. He would make many condiment-based puns. For example, the big bad bat guy, I knew you'd catch up to me sooner. How I relished this meeting. You, the dynamic Dark Knight, versus me, the conceptual Condiment King. Come, Batman, let's see if you can cut the mustard. The Condiment King is seemingly killed after being betrayed and bludgeoned by the human flame with his own ketchup ketchup and mustard guns in the miniseries Final Crisis Aftermath Run, which is a comic book, which already shows how he can actually be deadly aside from the whole like anaphylactic shock thing. And that's again not taking into account any potential allergic reactions that he can trigger or blindness. I mean, like, ketchup and mustard are very acidic and can cause some serious damage if left unchecked. It just goes right into the eyes, you know? Plus, what if you have fries and he gives you mustard, okay? The only appropriate punishment for that is death.
At number 5, we have the Batman who laughs. This villain is a force that Batman only faces off against here and there, but when he does, it's never an easy fight. This is because the Batman who laughs is a disturbing combination between Batman and the Joker, giving him the smarts and fighting skill of Batman and the absolute insanity of the Joker. Luckily, in the fight I'm thinking of for this entry, Batman gets the best of this crazy villain and gives him an absolutely savage beatdown. But it never seems to be enough to wipe the smile off of this villain's face. So it's not the most satisfying win for Batman in any case. The Batman who laughs has the power of Dr. Manhattan, as well as the power of every crisis in the history of the world. Don't ask me how this happens, but when it does, the whole of reality shakes in response. At number 4, we have the White Martians. With the same power as Martian Manhunter, these extraterrestrials are nothing to be taken lightly. Much like other classic depictions of alien creatures, these guys have a proclivity for taking over other planets and enslaving races at will. So when they get together and form a team called the HyperClan, the Justice League only finds out about their plans after it's too late, and it's chaos. Basically, the Justice League gets totally overpowered and all the team members are captured, except for Batman. Yes, they think Batman is as good as dead, so they leave him on the battlefield to die alone. But can you guess whether or not that's what happens? Right, Batman comes back with a vengeance and carries out a stealthy mission to take out the Martians one by one and frees his team of heroes before it's too late. But it's a close one. At number 3, we have Ares, the god of war. In Dark Knight's Metal, there are a number of different incarnations of Batman, and all of them are extremely powerful in their own ways. But one that might stand out from the rest is basically Batman wearing the helmet of Ares. Ares, for those of you who don't know, is the god of war in ancient mythology. And just to show how supremely powerful Batman could be, writers decided to put him in a comic with Batman and have Batman face off against him and win. He does get help from Wonder Woman, and it's by no means an easy fight considering Ares is after all the god of frickin' war. But Batman ends up taking his helmet and becoming the new god of war in the process. This sort of turns him into a tyrant, but that's besides the point. Ares is definitely one of Batman's strongest villains he's ever fought. At number 2, we have evil Superman from the Dark Knight storyline. This one we all know. The famed face-off between an evil incarnation of Superman and a well-armored Batman. This event, which eventually inspired the Zack Snyder film Batman vs Superman, chronicles the epic war between the infinitely powerful Kryptonian alien Superman and the mortal Bruce Wayne. What makes this event so impactful and popular is that on paper, there's a huge discrepancy in power between these two. Anyone betting on the outcome of the fight would probably put their money on Superman. But what ends up taking place is entirely unexpected, with Batman taking the win over Superman at the end of the day. But it's fair to say this isn't easy by any means. It's Superman. He's only at number 2 because number 1 is nearly impossible to contend with. So last but certainly not least is Darkseid at number 1. During the Final Crisis event, Darkseid and his army invade Earth and take out a bunch of Earth's heroes. At first, this includes Batman, who's imprisoned quite easily by Darkseid and kept in his custody. And this is yet another huge mistake to leave Batman alive, because when Darkseid uses his anti-life equation on all of Earth, Batman is unaffected in Darkseid's custody. And he eventually finds a way to escape and hunts down Darkseid. Batman gets Darkseid good with a special god-killing bullet, seriously injuring him and nearly killing him. But Darkseid comes back at him by sending him back in time. But once again, even though it really looks like it, Batman isn't actually killed. It's pretty impressive that a mortal superhero is able to do so much damage on a literal ancient god who is otherwise used to taking everything in his way. But will someone finally learn that banishing Batman isn't gonna do the trick? Somebody's gotta take him out. Not that I want that, but it would be for their own good. This list is an example.
Coming in at number 10, we have the intelligent zombie Solomon Grundy. Inspired by a 19th century English nursery rhyme, Solomon Grundy was born centuries ago as a wealthy merchant, but after being murdered and having his body dumped in a swamp with mystical properties, he's now cursed to constantly be resurrected with slightly different properties each time. Usually being depicted as an incredibly physically strong zombie, Grundy's greatest power is his resilience to both magic and physical damage, meaning that every time he's faced by Batman, he needs to figure out a whole new, clever plan to find a way to properly defeat him. Coming in at number 9, we've got to go with Clayface. When you're facing off against the world's greatest detective, being able to disguise yourself as anyone seems like a pretty useful skill to have. This alone would make Clayface a difficult foe for Batman to overcome, but combine that with the huge amounts of physical strength that Clayface possesses when he changes into his more monstrous Hulk-like form, and you have a rare mix of stealth and strength that keeps Bruce Wayne on his toes. This ability to manipulate others through careful mimicry allows Clayface to be far more intelligent than he appears. And while his skill as an actor comes across as funny in depictions such as the Harley Quinn TV show, it can be quite deadly under more serious circumstances. Coming in at number 8, we've got to go with the bladed assassin, Deathstroke. While in recent years, Slade Wilson has become more well-known for tormenting the Teen Titans, Deathstroke has also had many run-ins with the Justice League and the Dark Knight himself. With his brain operating at 9 times the efficiency of a normal human brain, Deathstroke is exactly the type of opponent that pushes Batman to his physical limits, with a complete mastery of every weapon he has at his disposal. Combine that with his Icon suit, which has been shown to even be able to withstand a punch from metahumans such as Superman, and this is a foe that Batman is always just barely able to outwit and defeat. Coming in at number 7, we have the malicious psychologist known as Hugo Strange. One of Batman's oldest villains, originally debuting only a few issues after the Caped Crusader himself in Detective Comics, Professor Hugo Strange was also one of the very first villains to ever figure out his secret identity as Bruce Wayne. While initially depicted as a typical mad scientist stereotype, more recent interpretations of the character have seen him as a devious manipulator, using his position of power as a doctor of psychology to examine the criminals of Arkham Asylum and scheming to gain power throughout Gotham City. It's this emphasis on mental ability rather than actual superpowers that makes Hugo Strange such an interesting villain to deal with, and the fact that he's consistently been able to figure out Batman's biggest secret in multiple different universes means that Hugo Strange just might be one of Bruce Wayne's biggest threats. Coming in at number 6, we have Bane, the villain who broke the Bat. A brilliant tactical warrior who was raised from childhood inside an island prison, Bane's most notable act was when he systematically eliminated Batman's support system and eventually faced and bested him in single combat, shattering Bruce Wayne's spine over his knee. This victory over the Dark Knight was only temporary, but has still given Bane an intimidating reputation that he more than lives up to, going on to become a supervillain crime boss and proving that Bane isn't just about pure physical strength, but that he's also a ruthless and brutal strategist as well, even willing to kill Alfred Pennyworth just to emotionally shatter Damian Wayne. It just goes to show that you should never ever underestimate Bane.
Number 5, Pig. Professor Pig is a villain that came to be during a time when Batman's stories were becoming incredibly dark, and Pig himself has to be one of the darkest villains of that era. His methods completely disgust the Dark Knight. He looks like a character straight out of a horror or slasher movie, and his obsession with physical perfection, like in the myth of Pygmalion, became part of the reason he surgically mutilates his victims, turning them into his mind-controlled servants called Dolotrons. If his crimes weren't horrifying enough, then just look at him. Yeah. Get out of my nightmares, thank you. Bye. Number 4, Scarecrow. With Scarecrow, fear is the name of the game. I don't believe Batman is actually scared of Scarecrow himself, but Scarecrow has used his fear toxin to debilitate and send the Dark Knight running on multiple occasions, and that makes him a unique foe that puts Batman in a position he doesn't often find himself in. Batman is a physical powerhouse with a mind that is exceedingly sharp, but his mind is also partially his biggest weakness because he has some serious psychological issues, and Scarecrow's whole shtick is manipulating that kind of thing. When Scarecrow pops up on the scene, the Dark Knight knows that something terrifying is coming his way. Number 3, the Court of Owls. Probably the oldest, most secretive, and most profitable group in Gotham City's underworld. When Bruce Wayne became a threat to them, they put Batman through one hell of a psychological ringer and possibly one of the darkest Batman stories ever. He gets trapped in a huge Court of Owls maze underneath Gotham City, and trying to make his way through it, Batman goes through physical and psychological tests that nearly break the Dark Knight. But the court has so many feathers in all areas of Gotham and Bruce Wayne's own life. They may have even had a hand in the passing of his parents. Possibly. And we haven't even started talking about the Talons, a group of brainwashed and undead robot-like assassins. The combo of psychological warfare and the deadly Talons nearly brought Bruce Wayne to the pearly gates. Number 2, Bane. His name says it all, as Bane has been the bane of Batman on multiple occasions. The Bane we saw in the Dark Knight Rises movie was fantastic, and he absolutely instilled fear in Batman, but the comic version of that same story goes to a whole other level. With his master plan being even more well thought out and damaging to Batman, he unleashed Arkham Asylum on Gotham, putting Batman on the ropes as he has to chase down all the escaped criminals. Bane studied Batman. He utilizes his own weaknesses and completely destroys Batman, breaking his back in one of the most infamous comic book moments ever. More recently though, Bane brought Batman even lower than when he broke his spine because he broke Bruce's heart by snapping the neck of Alfred Pennyworth. Any battle Batman has fought against Bane has been with the help of his allies, and that's because Batman knows that he can't take on Bane alone. Number 1, the Joker. I think if there is one person who scares Batman more than anyone, it's gotta be the Joker. They have had such a long and complex history with each other, and I think because of that, and the Joker's obsession with the Bat, Joker knows all the ways to mess with Batman, and he's constantly coming up with new ones. He will go after anyone to get at Batman, and he will go through anyone just for the fun of it. He's unpredictable. Batman never knows for sure where he will strike and what he will do unless the Joker wants Batman to know. Everything is a game that he knows the rules to. The other thing about Joker is that he would never actually take the Dark Knight's life. In fact, I feel like he would probably destroy anyone who tries to. This just makes him more terrifying as he simply wants to be a constant cause of fear and anxiety for the Dark Knight, and he is.
At number 10, we have the Joker. Now, I know he's already been portrayed in the dceu, but I wanted to put him on the list because I don't think his portrayal should end with how he was depicted in Suicide Squad, nor should it continue that way. In my opinion, I think there's a good chance for the DCEU to redeem this character with another iteration of the character. Now, even if you disagree with me on that front, I still think that this character has gotten so much attention in visual media over the last 20 years that it might be time for other villains to get the same treatment. But if we're going to include Matt Reeves' recent Batman movie in this list, which I'm going to do for simplicity's sake, it appears as though, spoiler alert, a Joker character is being hinted at for a sequel anyway. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm very excited to see what they come up with, which is why the Joker still makes this list. But I also couldn't help but feel like this was a missed opportunity to bring an underrepresented villain into the DCEU. Like another one on this list, perhaps. Man-Bat. This villain has to be one of the creepiest and most traditionally horror-based bad guys in the Batman universe. This bat-human hybrid creature first appeared in Detective Comics number 400 in 1970, making him a pretty classic villain that we don't often see reimagined in Batman stories. He's kind of like Batman's Curtis Connors, if you will, being a monstrosity that was accidentally derived from unstable lab work. He even comes in and out of sentience in later storylines, showing a sympathetic side at times since, after all, all, there is a scientist somewhere in there. I think it would be really cool to see how a director would go about incorporating villains so visually striking into the DCEU. It would be a great challenge for visual effects artists, and I'd personally love to see his close-ups using practical makeup instead of CGI. It feels like the DCEU has a chance to bring back the campiness of early 2000s practical effects in a tasteful way, don't you think? I think. Alright, at number 8, we've got Poison Ivy. This villain needs to be introduced into the DCEU, and there's some chatter online that this is basically inevitable. Not only is the villain just a hugely prominent player across the Batman universe, but her appearance could also have a pretty interesting social commentary on the state of the world. Poison Ivy is an eco-terrorist, for those of you who don't know, using her hybridized plant DNA to keep Batman and other heroes at bay. And if she were portrayed in a modern DC movie, I think it would be really cool to see how the climate change discussion could be woven into the narrative. I'd honestly be interested to see her as the central figure of a whole movie's conflict personally, because her influence is also enormous, having the ability to use her pheromones to control the likes of Superman himself. It's a good opportunity for the writers of a new Batman universe movie or episode to work in a timely and powerful conflict for Bruce Wayne to overcome. At number 7, it's Solomon Grundy. This zombie villain isn't exclusively a Batman villain, having first been a bad guy to the Green Lantern and also to Superman. Solomon first appeared in a 1987 issue of History of the DC Universe and based on one of those super depressing old 19th century nursery rhymes. His origins have differed over the years, but the general consensus is that when he was alive, he was a criminal type named Cyrus Gold, who was murdered in a swamp and his body left there to reanimate years later. I think he'd be a great addition to a future Batman film because with his association to Green Lantern and Superman, he can be used as a through line to tie a bunch of superhero storylines together as the DCEU expands. Not only that, but zombies also tend to sell pretty well in film and TV. Maybe this is a good way to bring DC zombies to the big screen. I'd love to see that personally. At number 6, Clayface. This villain would be very cool to see in a modern Batman movie or TV show due to both his backstory and just the way he looks. Clayface's backstory deals in the world of film, so it's no question that this character would have a ton of potential for a spot in the DCEU. I mean, Basil's descent into insanity comes from being replaced in a remake of a film he'd originally starred in. So maybe this adds a cool meta element to the DCEU. Fans seem to love how far Marvel went with their meta commentary, so maybe DC could do the same. Or more simply, this could just allow the director to delve into whatever the Hollywood of Gotham would be. And maybe that could open a door to commentary on real-life Hollywood, bringing us even closer to Gotham's realities as a city. Aside from all this, Clayface might just offer another cool opportunity for visual effects artists to go to town on his face folds. I'm a sucker for practical effects, what can I say?
Halfway through in at number 5, Mirror Man. Lloyd Ventress is a criminal who was detained at Gotham State Penitentiary. Using broken mirror shards, he distracts the guards long enough to escape from prison. Then, inspired by mirrors, somehow he becomes Mirror Man. Upon creating a machine that would enable him to look through objects, Mirror Man began targeting Batman so he could figure out his secret identity. He literally discovers Batman's secret identity by using an X-ray mirror, which is freaking nuts. Mirror Man gets sent to prison before he can reveal the identity, however, but because they want conflict, he manages to escape, with a plan to reveal Bruce's identity to the world, only foiled when Alfred, dressed as Batman, interrupts a press conference Bruce Wayne was holding, instantly disproving the fact that Batman is Bruce Wayne because he saw them both in the same room. However, the public should have also seen this coming, so maybe the people of Gotham City are dumber than we thought. Well, I mean, they had Condiment King, so I guess they are pretty dumb. And at 4, Calculator. While the Calculator now seems to be an oracle of sorts for supervillains, the original purpose and MO of the Calculator is far more entertaining and interesting for me. Noah Cutler began his criminal career by crossing the country and getting into fights with various superheroes intentionally, analyzing and recording their battle tactics to ensure that he couldn't be beaten again. Or in some incarnations, he would simply get beaten and then press a button on his chest to ensure that he didn't get beat again. Maybe that was taking down the information or something, I don't know. But either way, do you know how insanely overpowered that could have been? Just being able to press a button on your chest and then boom, you're instantly basically immune to Batman or Robin or even Superman. That would be amazing. You do this enough times and you can just do whatever you want. Then other villains start paying you to do their crimes for them because you guarantee success. That's freaking nuts. I wish they kept that Calculator because he could have been a bigger villain than Darkseid if he kept going like that. Damn, that would have been awesome. Getting close to the end in number 3, Killer Moth. Having decided that the lawbreakers of Gotham City needed a costume protector just as the honest citizens needed Batman, Killer Moth emulated the Dark Knight in every way, copying his paraphernalia and building on his legend to create his own supervillain identity, like Batman's version of Reverse Flash. He even had his own moth signal that supervillains could use when they were in trouble. Drewy Walker, introduced in Batman number 63 in 1951, is actually the first supervillain Barbara Gordon ever defeated as Batgirl, which I mean probably doesn't support the whole most powerful thing, but think about it. If Mothman was worried more about his twisted sense of justice than money, as he was motivated by, he would have been an insane villain. Wanting to protect the criminal underworld just for the sake of it rather than to get paid, while maybe slightly more unrealistic, would make him insane. He also ended up basically making a devil's bargain to become more powerful, but that resulted in him becoming a hideous creature that truly resembled the name Killer Moth. So, that could have been something. But ultimately, in number 2, the Eraser. The Eraser was the chosen alias of Lenny Fiasco, who turned to crime after living his college days under constant mocking and taunting by his classmates. Fiasco is a professional at covering up the tracks of other crimes. For a 20% cut, the Eraser will erase the evidence of another crime. And honestly, I think that this is the only job that anyone with the last name Fiasco could have. Sorry. This villain's power is a special helmet designed to look like a pencil eraser that can wipe off evidence, even those that would be invisible to the naked eye, which is actually pretty damn cool when you think about it. After Batman posed as a villain to try to capture the Eraser, the villain told Bruce, who he had realized was Bruce, that he had actually become a criminal because Bruce shattered his dreams of going out with Celia Smith. Bruce didn't even remember her name, which made Eraser even angrier, but yeah, I think that this is the absolute coolest concept for a supervillain though, because in all honesty, if this guy just wasn't an idiot, he would have ruled the world. Straight up, this guy would ruin every single investigation. He could turn the tide of trials. This guy would end up being a shadow government. If only he wasn't a dumbass. Finally, in at number 1, Lex Joker. Lex Joker was created when John Dee, also known as Dr. Destiny, collapsed the DC universe in half. First appearing in Batman/Superman number 60 in 2009, Lex Joker is a combination of, you guessed it, Clayface and Bane. No, just kidding, it's Joker and Lex Luthor. Lex Joker hired Doomstroke and Terranado to destroy the Justice Titans. However, after the JTs allied with Batman and Superman, he hired 4 more mercenaries to create the Brotherhood of Injustice. Thanks to Terra, who had gone undercover within the JTs, they were able to attack the Justice Tower, and come on, let's be honest. If you have the brains of Lex Luthor and the complete insanity of the Joker, that's one hell of an opponent. When you have 2 powerful forces in comics, at some point they're just bound to be put together in some way to create a larger, even more powerful villain. And Lex Joker is probably the scariest combination that we could have gotten that wasn't like Joker and Doomsday or Joker and Darkseid.
At number 10, we have Talon and the Court of Owls. Now, what gives Talon power isn't his might as an individual villain, but the power he has over the Court of Owls, an organization that has posed a serious threat to Batman time and time again. But that doesn't mean that Talon hasn't done damage on Batman single-handedly either. One of the Talons, William Cobb, is actually responsible for killing members of the Wayne family and also for attempting to turn Dick Grayson evil. Once again, his level of brute force is not out of Batman's range, but having this type of influence on Batman's life, both on the streets of Gotham and in his personal life, at least has Talon squeezing onto the end of this list among the other powerful bad guys to come. Alright, at number 9 we have Mr. Freeze. Often dismissed as a campy and relatively harmless villain, Mr. Freeze brings more to the table than Arnold Schwarzenegger's goofy portrayal in Batman and Robin. Mr. Freeze's armor is actually known to be extremely durable, with its newest iteration being strong enough to deflect bullets and protect from explosions. And on top of that, of course, he's got his freeze gun. This unique weapon shoots a blast of ice cold energy that freezes everything in its path, often leaving its targets encased in a tomb of ice. He's also a scientific genius, having designed and built every piece of equipment he wears and every weapon he uses. So his capabilities for years to come may only get more and more dangerous to Batman as he innovates his armor and weaponry further. And time is on his side, considering his lifespan has increased since the day he started wearing his Sub-Zero suit. At number 8 we have Solomon Grundy. This villain may not strike you as posing a huge threat to Batman, but you might be surprised. Also known to be a villain to Superman, Solomon Grundy is actually known to have a strength level on par with the Man of Steel himself. So that alone is enough for this guy to make a list about sheer power. With many of Batman's villains being tricksters and glorified terrorists, Solomon Grundy's extreme power has him standing out from the crowd, no matter which way you look at it. And this villain has literally been dead before, so it's insinuated that he's pretty much invulnerable. And if Batman ever finds a way to take him out, it most likely won't be for good. And it surely isn't ever easy to do so either. At number 7 is Deathstroke. Slade Wilson, or Deathstroke, is an extremely powerful bad guy who is basically a genetically enhanced super soldier with super durability, speed, strength, everything. Super everything. He is also a skilled tactician and martial artist, making him extremely competent in battle. In the Identity Crisis storyline, Deathstroke is hired by Dr. Light to protect him from the Justice League, who are tracking him down for a horrible crime. When Deathstroke comes after the Justice League, he shows them just how powerful and strategic he can be and takes out all of them, including Batman, beating him up so badly that he doesn't really see another beating like this until nightfall. At number 6 is the Predator. This bad guy isn't from the Batman universe, nor is he from any comic book world originally. Predator started in the self-titled movie featuring Arnold Schwarzenegger. Weird how that's the second time Arnold has made an appearance on this list. Anyway, this villain is a very unique one, and he faces off against Batman in Batman vs. Predator, a comic book series in 1991. It's a pretty epic face-off that lasts 4 long issues, and there are some pretty epic moments. What ends up sealing the deal for Predator is when Batman equips a very powerful armor and uses all the gadgets available to him to take out the alien. But the final tool that does the trick ends up being a baseball bat. Yep, you heard right. Batman beats the hell out of Predator with a baseball bat, leaving the alien to finish himself off with his own sword. It's a pretty brutal defeat, but did we really expect Predator to win?
Coming in at number 5, we have Mr. Bloom, the plant-based villain. With the ability to plant seeds within people that would grant them incredible superpowers, but at the cost of their lifespan, Mr. Bloom threw Gotham into chaos during a period where Bruce Wayne was unable to be Batman, and Commissioner James Gordon had instead taken up the cape and cowl. The coolest thing about Mr. Bloom wasn't just the unique look of his powers and his visual design, but how they were able to manipulate the people and villains of Gotham into a new status quo so easily. Seeing this villain have a rematch with Bruce Wayne, or even get to interact more with the similarly plant-based Poison Ivy, seems like an obvious choice for a comeback, and I can't wait to see what this villain does next. Coming in at number 4, we have Prometheus. While not an alternate reality version of Bruce Wayne like several other villains on this list, Prometheus is still a dark reflection of the Batman, given that he had to watch his criminal parents be gunned down Bonnie and Clyde style by Gotham City police forces. Waging war against law enforcement and justice of any kind, Prometheus is made all the deadlier with his helmet that allows him to download fighting skills directly into his brain. It's this deadly combo of physical prowess and ideological differences that make Prometheus one of the more interesting Bat villains, and someone who definitely needs to be featured more often. Coming in at number 3, we have the iconic Harvey Dent, aka Two-Face. Originally fighting for the side of justice with Bruce Wayne as Gotham's district attorney, Harvey Dent's mind was split in 2 following an acid attack that scarred exactly one half of his face. Making all of his decisions through a coin flip based on his past childhood trauma, Two-Face is one of the most well-known villains of Batman, but hasn't gotten a chance in recent years to really headline an event as a villain, usually only taking the focus in smaller storylines or as a supporting character. Personally, I think Two-Face is long overdue to take his place as a master of the criminal underworld. Coming in at number 2, we have Bruce Wayne's former childhood friend and current adulthood enemy, Hush. Born under the name of Thomas Elliot, Hush as a child was one of the first people to inspire Bruce on his road to becoming Batman. However, Thomas Elliot was a deranged child, wishing to have his family's fortune for himself and killing both of his parents to have it. After traveling the world and training to become a warrior, Hush adopted his supervillain persona and allied himself with the Riddler to rid the world of Bruce Wayne, organizing many of his enemies and even allies against him. And while the villain has appeared several times since, it's been a while since we've truly gotten to see the master manipulator Hush at work. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we have the Phantasm, aka Andrea Beaumont. Originally debuting in the animated film Batman: Mask of the Phantasm, Andrea Beaumont was Bruce Wayne's first love, the girl he almost considered abandoning his mission as Batman for before the mission had even begun. Unfortunately for Bruce, Andrea and his relationship was forced to an end by the death of her father, causing Andrea to begin her descent into becoming the vengeful spirit known as the Phantasm. As a villain with an incredibly cool design and a very personal connection to Batman, the Phantasm has been only recently seen in the comics, and definitely takes my top pick for the villain that most deserves another storyline.
Number 10. Doomsday. I have to just assume that Batman is afraid of Doomsday. And there are multiple reasons I believe this. For starters, anytime I've seen Batman even attempt to get involved in a fight with Doomsday, he is never throwing punches. He is either staying the heck out of the way, maybe only acting as a distraction, or he is powered up by some serious magical artifacts. Secondly, Batman is incredibly smart. He knows how hard it is for someone to take down Superman, and the fact that Doomsday is one of the few characters who is able to do it, and with such brutality, there is no way Batman is not intimidated by this monster. I refuse to believe it. Honestly, my favorite point of proof is seeing what Ben Affleck's Batman does in Batman vs Superman. Say what you want about that movie, but Batman jumping around the battlefield just trying his best to stay out of the way? Hilarious. Number 9. Prometheus. As a dramatic inversion of Batman, the tragic figure of Prometheus presents a serious threat to the Dark Knight. Enraged by the passing away of his parents at the hands of law enforcement, Prometheus vows to fight the law with the same intensity that Batman seeks to uphold it. Backed by ludicrous sums of money, Prometheus trains diligently and becomes the bane of police officers and military men across America. Armed with an all-powerful helmet, Prometheus earns godlike powers that give him the strength of the best fighters on Earth. It's no wonder that when he breaks into the Justice League Watchtower, he single-handedly beats the majority of the team, and Batman takes the majority of that shellacking. Prometheus runs the Dark Knight into the ground. It was the first showdown between the two orphans, and Prometheus takes the victory without any effort at all. Hey, are you liking this video? Well, then hit that thumbs up button, rookie. We need your support. Number 8. Zsasz. Victor Zsasz has a character trait that a few others on this list possess. He's just completely and utterly insane. Zsasz scares Batman for one main reason. Whenever he is not locked up, it's almost guaranteed that lives will come to an end, which just ups the ante because every escape of this killer becomes a race against the clock for Batman. He needs to bring him down fast before he adds another scar to his body. Every single one of those scars signifies a failure for Batman. Zsasz is a man with absolutely no form of pity or morals, and he will never stop unless he passes away, but we know Batman will never do that. In an alternate story, Injustice, Zsasz is even responsible for the passing of Alfred Pennyworth, which was not supposed to happen, but because Zsasz is Zsasz, it did. Number 7. Thomas Wayne Batman. Other versions of Batman always have the potential to be a scary thought for our Batman, or anyone, really. But when that version of Batman is Bruce Wayne's own father, who completely destroys him emotionally, teams up with Bane, and is trying to stop Batman being Batman so he can have a normal life, it's an incredibly interesting idea for a character, honestly. But with all the daddy issues Batman has, for his alternate reality father to be so twisted and brutal has got to be a terrifying thought. But what did Thomas do that was so bad? Well, let me tell you. Alongside Bane, he ruined Batman and Catwoman's wedding, causing her to leave him at the altar, nearly had Batman send Mr. Freeze to the afterlife for a crime he did not commit, kidnapped Damian Wayne, hired the KG Beast to take out Dick Grayson, he had Bane put Alfred Pennyworth in the ground, then Thomas incapacitated Bruce with fear toxin and kidnapped him. He dug up the coffin of Martha Wayne, wishing to use the Lazarus Pit to resurrect Martha so that they could all be a happy family again. He went more than a little overboard is what I'm saying. Number Number 6, the Batman who laughs. Another version of Batman, only this time it's basically the ultimate evil version of himself. A Jokerized Bruce Wayne. He is just absolutely awful. He has all the smarts and skill of Batman himself, but the completely bonkers unpredictability of Joker. And this combo causes the Batman who laughs to become one of the biggest threats to the entire multiverse. Now, being a Jokerized Bruce Wayne, he has a few differences to the man himself. He's thinner and faster, but physically weaker. Unfortunately, physicality in battle with this guy doesn't really matter. He's got backup in the form of his Dark Knights, and he has backup plans on top of backup plans as any Batman worth his salt would have. This guy put his consciousness into a Batman with the power of Dr. Manhattan and destroyed Perpetua, the first creator of the multiverse and the mother of the Monitor, Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger. Number 5, Maxi Zeus. I had a really cool history professor in high school who specifically taught classics, which is Greek and Roman history. Super cool guy, but I'm just imagining him becoming a Gotham crime lord. He was an awesome person, so I just can't see it, but luckily in DC Comics we have Maxi Zeus, a former history teacher. Following the loss of his wife, Maxi Zeus started to suffer from delusions that he was the actual human reincarnation of the god Zeus. Using his genius-level intellect, he became a Gotham City crime lord, establishing himself and his group of followers. Cultists. Mobsters. I don't really know. He had a short-lived battle against Batman, and he has been pretty much locked up at Arkham ever since, occasionally breaking out. Most recently though, his randomly super strong and ripped body was used to revive Deacon Blackfire, but this didn't last very long, so it doesn't really matter. Number 4, Colonel Sulphur. This Denny O'Neil created villain from the 70s is an espionage expert with a weaponized artificial hand, a tool he has used to commit very espionage-type crimes. He's very Bond villainy if we're being honest. Colonel Sulphur has a strange sunlight fixation though, meaning he only allows himself to act on his violent urges in the quote, morning's earliest minutes, which is one hell of a specific yet very obscure time frame for criminal activity. He did actually prove to be a bit more of a threat when he joined the Army of Crime. When the Army of Crime's activities were challenged by Batman and Superman, Sulphur used an alien weapon to trap Superman and Batman in a timeless dimension. Sulphur then used stolen weapons to take over Gotham City, but as you may suspect, he was soon stopped by Batman and Superman, who had escaped from the timeless dimension. These things happen. Sorry, dude. Number 3, Lord Deathman. The Japanese crime boss known as Lord Deathman has battled Batman both in American comics and in Japanese manga, using his powers to seemingly overcome death itself, able to rise from the grave no matter what his injury is. In his first appearance in Batman number 180 in May 1966, he passed away 3 times using a yogi technique to appear dead before the final conflict, which saw him get struck by lightning and actually pass away. But since then, he has actually gained the real power to come back from the dead, but at the cost of having a bare bones skull for a head. His regenerative abilities are so powerful that his blood is used to create the infamous Lazarus pits that Ra's al Ghul uses to stay young and immortal. One of the first ways Batman defeated Lord Death with his new powers is honestly a little out of character for the Crusader. He threw Lord Deathman off a building into the path of an armored car, which took the criminal down just long enough for Catwoman to lock him in a safe, and then he was shot into space. And he still came back. Number 2, the Condiment King. I think at this point, Condiment King is a little more well known, just because of how ridiculous he is. He first appeared in the DC animated universe as Buddy Standler, who was a comedian manipulated by the Joker into being a Batman villain. He became an even bigger joke of a character when he was introduced to the DC Comics as Mitchell Mayo. No, I am not joking, yes, that is his actual name. No one really takes Condiment King that seriously, and I can understand why, although it should be noted that he can totally stain your clothes, and if you're allergic to any of the condiments he fires out of his ketchup, barbecue sauce, and mustard guns, then he can be quite dangerous. What I'm most curious of is the quality of his short-lived restaurant when he temporarily went legit. Can you imagine if he couldn't even get food right? That would just suck. Number 1, Johnny Karaoke. I actually couldn't find a page for Johnny Karaoke on the DC Wiki, so that should tell you just how obscure this guy actually is. Johnny Karaoke is a Yakuza loan shark who has the odd knack of singing into his microphone as he is committing his crimes. A microphone whose stand doubles as a sword that he will pull out on you when you let your guard down from laughing at him. On top of his odd singing career, Johnny leads a little gang known as the Geisha Girls. That's spelled Grrrls, like Grr. Ulz. Very, very fear-inspiring. Maybe not the most intimidating of Batman's villains, not at all really, but this villain is honestly just too interesting to stay buried for too long. I'm personally advocating for the big screen debut of Johnny Karaoke, and it better be comic book accurate.